Hello? Tonight, we are taking a break from kings, castles, and those flashy wars. You know those stories that never appear in history books or on the oil paintings hanging on walls? That is where we are going. We will look at ordinary lives, at medieval peasants, at those who didn't sit on thrones, didn't ride horses, but survived in spite of sickness, hunger, cold, and 1,000 kinds of trouble. No one had a title. They had no legacy to leave behind. There were only long, inexhaustible days and short nights that passed in the blink of an eye. They lived in that silent resistance that most of us couldn't endure for even a day. Dim the lights, lean back. We are heading towards the edge of the map. The distant and forgotten village, not on the map. Look, this village doesn't even have a proper name. Maybe it did once, but there is no one left who remembers it. It stands in a narrow valley in the middle of nowhere, a place far from sight and roads, of no concern to kings. Even if you had a map, it would be very difficult to find this place. Besides, you don't have a map anyway. Have you ever seen a map in your entire life? Here, the world ends where the forest begins. The forest is pitch black, terrifying, like an old giant who barely tolerates your presence there. The fields stretch out in patches. The soil is tired. You are tired. It is said there is a river to the north. I've never seen it, but they speak of it as if talking about dragons. This is the place where you were born, and this is the place where you will breathe your last. The distance between birth and death is perhaps 100 steps. Do you see the houses? They look as if they would collapse if the slightest wind blew. The walls are made of waddle and daub, mud and straw. The roofs covered with reeds. The ceilings leak. They constantly need repair. The inside of the house smells of wet wool, smoke, and earth, and a bit of animal smell, of course. But your nose has gotten used to it. This place smells like life. How does time pass? The days are quiet. If a light wind blows, the sound of a church bell from very far away reaches your ear. You tell the time by looking at the sun's position in the sky, or from that familiar ache that stabs your lower back towards noon. Everyone in the village knows each other. Everyone's troubles are out in the open, but no one rubs it in anyone's face. There is an old man named Tom, the so-called village sage. He once chatted with a monk, and since then, he keeps telling the same story at every opportunity. And no one steps up to say, "Tom, enough already, stop making things up." Is his hut sturdy? Sturdy? Is his goat alive? Alive. All right then, that much leadership is enough for us. There is no school, no inn, no bakery. If someone unfamiliar came, it would be an event. Who is this? Why did he come? Is he enchanted? Would be talked about for days. And no one leaves here. They cannot. Cities, stone-walled buildings are like a fairy tale land to you. The story of the talking animal is just as real to you as those stone-walled buildings. If you hit the road, where would you arrive? The forest is terrible. The steep and dangerous roads are full of mud. There is no map. Turn left after that crooked tree, they say, that's all. Bandits roam those roads. Wolves wander. You have no money in your pocket. What will you do in a place where you don't know the language or the customs? That's why you stay. The familiar is safe. Even if the roof leaks, even if the food is tasteless, this is your home. Not a home, a shelter. The house you live in doesn't look like the houses we know. This is a forced compromise made between you and nature. You cut down trees to set up a simple frame, and you fill the gaps with mud. It turns out crooked and lumpy, but it works. The roof is made of thatch. It looks nice when first made, all yellow. Then it rains, birds make nests in time, and naturally, it rots. The inside of the house is constantly under a cloud of smoke. Since there is no chimney, the smoke tries to escape through a hole in the roof, but most of it hangs inside. Your eyes sting slightly all the time. Your clothes always smell of soot. The floor is dirt. It has hardened from walking on it. But when it rains, it turns to mud. And yes, you're not alone in the house. A cow, chickens, maybe a few goats. You all sleep in the same room. Is it dirty? Yes. But without the body heat of those animals in winter, you would freeze. That's why you don't mind the noises they make or their smells. Food, just to fill the belly eating, isn't a pleasure for you, my friend. It's a matter of survival. There is no place called a kitchen. There is a pot over the fire. Do you know what's inside? Pottage. That is the never-ending stew. You throw whatever you can get your hands on into it in the morning, you eat it in the evening, and the next day you add a little more to the leftovers. The pot is never fully washed, the food never fully runs out. If you ask how it tastes, like boiled sorrow. There are no spices, very little salt. There is bread, too. But don't expect soft bread fresh from the oven. It is bread as hard as stone, dark in color. Great for breaking a tooth, be careful. Wheat bread is for the wealthy. You can barely eat barley or rye. Who is your owner? Actually, you have nothing. Nothing is yours. You plowed a field, but the land belongs to the Lord. You built the house, but a house belongs to the Lord. You are a villain, meaning you are bound to the soil. You cannot say, I don't feel like it, I'm moving. Several days a week, you work unpaid not for your own stomach or field, but for the Lord's field. This is called drudgery. They take a portion of the eggs, the wheat, whatever you produce as tax. You want to grind flour at the mill? You pay because the mill belongs to the Lord. You want to bake bread in the oven? You pay. You want to get married? They take a tax. You die? They make your son pay a tax just to take your place. The order works like this. They are the owners. You are the worker. And your only chance and hope is for the Lord not to notice you. Because if you attract his attention, it usually doesn't end well. Sickness and medicine. In the past, sickness was an ordinary part of life. You don't know what a germ is. It hasn't been invented yet. When someone falls into bed, you say, bad air hit them, or God punished them because of sins committed. Treatment methods are a complete farce. Do you have a fever? They drain your blood. Does your stomach ache? They make you chew coal. When the plague arrives, things get even more complicated. From those burying onions in the corner of the house to those tying a chicken to the sick person. Despair makes a person try anything. There is no hospital. You lie at home and either get better or you die. How does the night pass? When night falls, life stops. It is hard to find light. Candles are a great luxury. Everywhere is condemned to pitch darkness. Everyone, kids, parents, sometimes cows, crams into the same room and curls up to sleep. Back then, sleep didn't finish in one breath. Sleep is experienced in two parts. First, you go to bed, then you wake up at midnight. In that interval, you pray, you stoke the fire, you tell your dreams. Then, if you can, you sleep again. Meanwhile, wolves howl outside, the wind creaks, those next to you snore. But you aren't afraid. Being in a crowd makes one feel safe. Why didn't they rebel? One can't help but ask, right? All this suffering, all these taxes, why didn't they pick up their pickaxes and scream, "Enough"? The answer is very simple. They didn't, because they didn't have the energy. You can't plan a revolution when you return home on an empty stomach after working in the field all day until you're exhausted, my friend. Surviving is harder than rebelling. Plus, the system is so ruthless that if you rebel, they burn not just you, but your family too. Besides, where would you run? This is the only place you know. You know your neighbor. You know your field. That's why you grit your teeth and say, "Be thankful for this too." Do you know what their rebellion was? Staying alive, to continue singing songs, loving their children, and telling stories despite all that poverty. Today, those kings and knights have become history and are gone. But those peasants, those nameless people, held on tight to the soil. And if we are here today, it is thanks to their stubborn patience.